whole time, the whole thing was shadowing us, right behind us, right on the side of us. You could kind of see the thing moving through the woods.
All I can remember is flipping the light on, and I see this creature, and I knew in my heart, I knew in my mind, and the whole nine yards, this isn't a man.
And then this thing walks across the road, takes a turn towards us, and then leaps over a guardrail.
Went to look forward, and there was a big black thing, is all I can call it.
Welcome to Squatch-D TV, exploring the Bigfoot mystery each week with your hosts, veteran researcher, author, and TV personality, the Squatch Detective, Steve Kulls, and from the Bigfoot Research Project of Kentucky, Chris Bennett. Sit back and buckle up as we bring you guests from around North America discussing the Bigfoot phenomena, but not without a few laughs, too. Here are your hosts, Steve and Chris.
And good evening, cyberspace. Welcome to Squatch-D TV for today's date, October 18th, 2020. I'm your host, your guide, the Squatch Detective, Steve Kulls, along with my co-host, Mr. Chris Bennett.
Hey, Steve, what's going on, man?
I am marvelous.
Good.
Marvelous.
Good.
And
we're having fun tonight, and if anybody wonders, I'm babysitting Yorkies, so if you hear some feuds going on in the background tonight, they're all around me, so just we'll try to work with that.
Well, greetings. And, of course, we have our guest all the way downstairs. Chris, you want to pass that along?
Oh, there's Jordan. Hey, Jordan.
Yeah, there's Jordan. I kind of feel like if we had like another 6 more people, we could do the Brady Bunch.
Yeah, it would. Yeah, just kind of set us across there in blocks. That would work.
We got to get somebody to play Alice, though, in the middle that just goes.
Oh, man.
But anyway, let's do our roll call as we normally do on our show to say hello to our
who we got over there.
Our cast of characters today. Of course, we got Ken. Hello, Ken.
Ken. Hey, Ken.
Of course, what night would be complete without B? Yes, we are back.
Hi, B.
John, how are you? Yep, John.
Welcome.
I'm so sorry about the Yanks. They're not in the World Series. Not that there's much of a series this year anyway. Let's see. There's Mr. Allen. Hello, Allen.
Allen. Hi, Allen.
Cindy, what's going on? Cindy, good to see you again. We got Tack. Michael, how are you, sir? Hope you're recuperating well.
Welcome, Tack. Hope
we got Rick.
Better.
Hey from
Hi,
Rick. Hey from Steve and Chris. Sean, good to see you.
Hey, Sean.
Awesome profile pic there, by the way. We got Chris. He's in the chat room. Hello, Chris.
Hey,
That's quite the fish you got there. Keith, you have no sound. Refresh.
Yeah. You got to hit the refresh button, Keith. It'll come back.
Poor Keith always has an issue. I don't know. Maybe sometimes you got to just, give the computer an old kick.
There's Jay. We found
There's
Jay
Jay.
again.
Finding Jay is Jay Bachochin. We found him. We found Jay. There he is in the chat room. And, of course, Chris made mention that he is down in Argentina. Hello, hello, hello.
Well, welcome, Chris. Golly, that's a long ways off. Yeah, welcome.
Well, he drove a long way to make it here on time. So, anyhow, before we... he's been cleared for the work in woods. All right.
Oh, good. Glad to hear it.
Good. I mean, I need my deck painted. No, just kidding. Not that kind of work. Here. Oh, goodness gracious. Mick, we're so sorry to hear that. Obviously, you have my prayers and condolences.
I hate to hear that, Mick.
Yeah, we'll take care of that. So sorry that bad news, but glad to see you're here. And if you're not so funny tonight, we understand. But your family and your aunt or your sister rather is in my prayers. Goodness gracious, a sister. And I know what it's like to lose a brother. So I know losing a sibling is tough, really tough. So my heart,
hang in there, Mick.
Yep. So anyhow, we do have a little bit of good news. We want to throw out a happy birthday to Bob Gimlin.
Happy birthday, Bob.
He's 89. And he doesn't talk like one of my characters, Mr. Abernathy. Hey, what are you doing, you son of a bitch? Mr. Abernathy's a pain in the ass, so we don't bring him on too often. But yeah, happy birthday, Bob. Good to hear that you're still kicking and doing your thing. And hopefully when this COVID BS is all up and done with, you can hit the road on a more regular basis again, because we know that keeps you going. Uh-oh. And that message was brought to you by Yorkie number 2. Who's complaining because Yorkie number 1 is going number 2.
You guys settle down.
So anyway,
I love the way Bob talks too.
Yes.
Sometimes being kind of from the South, people kind of make fun of the way I talk a little bit, but that's okay, But when Bob, when he wants to say creek, he says crick, and I can relate to that, And we call it a branch here, but he calls it a crick, and I really like that.
You also call it a holler that we call a little valley.
That's right. We got hills and hollers.
And hollers.
Yeah.
And, that's right. Kentucky, where the Hatfields and McCoys had it out.
Okay. I'll be right back, Steve.
Uh-oh. Well, Jordan, it's just you and me right now. Apparently there is a canine episode occurring at the Bennett residence.
Okay.
He's back. There he is.
I had to bust them up there. They were a little bit too rowdy.
Well, I'm glad you're on this quick, because I'd be terribly afraid if you took a little too long. I'd be like, what's he doing to the dogs?
Well, no. I just have to worry about my ankles. But, I have socks on, so,
you know what I'd be really afraid of is that, all of a sudden hang on, I got to take care of the dogs.
Oh, no, that would never happen here, because I would probably get hit on the head with a rolling pin if I did anything to these dogs. These are mama's babies. We got to take care of them. But truth is, I love them just as much as she does. And I wasn't a dog person, but when you're surrounded by them, you have no choice. They get in your heart.
Yes, they do. So, Sean said that How to Hunt is starting the Bobby Short stuff again. In other words, I don't know if he's alluding that she was murdered. All I can say is this, is that, there are people that have agendas, and this is kind of what I was going to do a quick little soliloquy here about, a post I had made. But as far as, the fork chop is in the house.
Hey, Sean.
And make sure he has brought back the Sasquatch experience with our other good friend, Henry May. Mm-hmm. And so, make sure you catch that program as well. But hey, I don't know if the Sasquatch experience is on Blog Talk or not. But maybe Sean can give us a heads up. If not, we could probably get him over on this platform, which is a much more fun platform.
Yeah, Sean. You got to put Henry onto this too, because this is good. I mean, I love this platform. It's great. Yeah. We can show videos and all kinds of crap, where before we could just talk.
That is Mr. David Winter. Hello, David.
Hey, Dave.
Good to see you back in the show, sir. He was. There was this illusion that he had made that, these people are doing evil things. The people that want to say that Bigfoot is an ape and, not, or a primate. Bigfoot's not a primate. Well, this guy is. And also John is in the show.
Hey, John. Welcome.
He too, as well, is showing off a fish he had caught. So we're gonna have a fishing tournament, live fishing tournament here on. What are you guys, squatchers or fishers? Fishermen. So,
oh man.
But I don't want to get into Mr. How to Hunt, how not to hunt anytime soon. We'll do it. We'll do that another night.
Yeah.
But exactly. But the other day I posted, just funny, just for a little kick and grin, I posted this picture, which I changed the famous Fox and Janice Carter picture. I changed it to Grey Poupon. Do you have any Grey Poupon? Instead of asking for garlic, it's knocking on the door. Do you pardon me? Do you have any Grey Poupon? And the answer would be, why, certainly. Here you go. And so here it is. But that started a whole conversation with this guy, saying how, I know what these things are. Really? Why do tell? Well, he didn't really tell. He said, I have, oh, Jesus. I have, I've sat with them at the campfire and had conversations with them, and I have witnesses too. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty interesting. What did they say? Well, he didn't really say what they said, but somebody said, hey, and I said, here it comes. Hey, if you don't have any pictures of these things, just, take me. I'll go along. Let me look. I'm sorry, but you're probably not ready for it yet. And that's always, that is always the story with those folks. That is always the story with these folks that have, these alleged habituations where they're coming in for garlic or Grey Poupon or he proved my point right there. That's proof right there. See, it's always the same. It's always the same script.
Yeah.
Why they can't get evidence? Well, they don't want their picture taken, like you said earlier. Or maybe they'll steal my soul. And the funny thing is Igor Burtsev went down to the Carter farm supposedly as a scientist.
Yeah.
And admits he did not see a single Sasquatch down there.
Yeah.
But, Janice seems so authentic and so nice. How can I not? And when it comes back to is the same reason why Dr. Warren Cook got snookered by Ivan Marks. It's because, they're, people that are enveloped in this sense of grandiose sense, they're not necessarily bad people. And I want to make that clear, that the people of the world that say, oh, I commune with Bigfoot, or I do this, or I do that, folks, they're not necessarily bad people. They're not even necessarily hoaxers in the respect as we would consider them. It's that they have this terrible, overwhelming need to feel socially accepted and special and big and part of something. And we talked the last time a couple of weeks ago about the logic problem, Fantastica Logica. And again, and David, you're right. They've programmed themselves to believe it because they keep repeating the same story over and over again. So I don't think they're bad. I don't think they're bad folks.
Nope.
But they're just not my cup of tea, and I get a little annoyed with it that, oh, here comes somebody again that has, that's trying to step in as the expert. Well, you wait 1 minute, I've sat with these, and no, please, folks.
Well, some of them actually may believe it. They might be the type
delusional?
of people that. Well, yeah, I didn't want to say that.
I mean, if you talk to, it's kind of funny because I was watching this. And Jordan, feel free to jump in on any of the conversation you wish to do tonight.
Yeah, bud.
If you are, I was watching this special last night. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. If on UFOs last night, and Nick Pope was on there, and as well as Nick Redfern. It was really a great program. It was recent. I think it was early 2020 actually was made, and Nick Redfern said it very succinctly that, and it's the same for any of the paranormal fields or the weird fields, whether it be cryptozoology, whether it be, here's trouble in town. Hello, Mr.
Mackie.
Mr. Austin. So, it comes down to a lot of this weirdness, is that either you're telling the truth, you're hoaxing it, you are misidentifying it, or you're being delusional. And that is the sad, thing. It's going to fall into one of those four categories. It's going to be real, misidentification, a hoax, or...
Yeah.
All right, hang on a second, guys. Hang on 1 second. Chris, take over for me for a minute. Start talking because I got a little issue with my laptop, so I gotta get this going here.
Okay, man.
All right.
Wow. I hope he gets that straightened out. All right, Nick. Come on, man. Or excuse me. Wait a minute, Jordan. We got Jordan. I'm talking about Mick. Oh, I see Mackie. Mick. Hey. Anyway, Jordan. Come on, man. Tell us, spill the beans. How did you get started in all this?
Oh, man. Let's see. It really was just a little boy. I was 9 years old, and I was just fascinated with monsters.
Yeah.
Godzilla, King Kong. Like, that was sort of like my identity as a kid because that kind of just spoke to me, And I remember being so young where I was looking through my parents' CD albums, and my mom had Elvis Presley. She had all the classics, but of course I was like 4 or 5. I'm like no. And I saw the Phantom of the Opera, and there was something about just the weirdness of that kind of spoke to me, just like the white mask, the black background, the way the text was. And I think I've always been drawn to just things that are sort of out of place. Things that are just kind of, I guess not normal, but I would prefer a better word than that. But just those type of things. And, over time, that just kind of evolved into something greater. And I was about 9 years old, 9 or 10. And my dad was actually watching a documentary about the Loch Ness Monster on the History Channel.
Oh, yeah.
And,
I love that stuff.
Yeah.
I love that stuff, too, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh, wow, that's cool. And, it's just about this dinosaur that's allegedly living in this random place in Scotland. I'm like, oh, wow. And then over time, so like 9 or 10, so this was probably maybe 2002, 2003, I just started doing research like most people these days on the internet. Just kind of looking at everything else. And I've always heard of Bigfoot. It's, subconsciously, I've heard of the name. I knew what it looked like, and just kind of that whole thing. And it just became the snowball effect of learning about other strange cryptids like Mothman, the Chupacabra, Pogo, just the list goes on. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So, it just, again, it snowballed into this huge interest of just wanting to learn more about it. Right. And, one of the shows that really I was drawn to was Animal X. That was on Animal Planet. Yeah. And that was one of the first programs that I watched as a kid. And then after that, Monster Quest came on History Channel. And by then...
I miss Monster Quest, man. I love that show.
Doug is awesome. He was one of the really first, if not the first person to take these subjects seriously into a scientific viewpoint. So, from that point, I just wanted to make my own. Like I even before Monster Quest and a little bit after Animal Planet, I kind of wanted to do my own thing. I wanted to make documentaries, and that's kind of what got me involved into filmmaking, because it was cryptozoology, Bigfoot research, and all that. Right. So, I just started sending out emails, calling people, that sort of thing, and it just became this snowball effect of just stepping into this crazy world of Bigfootry, and it kind of became its own thing. I think it was probably 2008. My dad and I, our first trip was to Lake Champlain, because I live in Buffalo, New York, so it's like the other side of the state where I am. It was about like a 6 to 7 hour drive, and we had the fortunate experience to meet a lot of people that have had reported sightings, and we had the opportunity to interview Sandra Mancy, who took the famous Champlain.
Yeah.
And the story behind that was really funny, because it was during those days of whitepages.com, where you could just type someone's name in, where they might live, and then their number pops up. They don't really do that anymore, but but I was looking up her name, and there was like two Sandra Mancys that were in Vermont, and I'm like, okay, one of them has to be it. So I randomly called that one of the numbers, and luckily it was actually her. And at first I called her to ask to use permission to use her photograph for my Champ documentary, and at first she was like, oh, well, she just really wasn't interested, and I kind of felt bad. And then that was it. But then I called her again, and I just said, hey, if I can't use the photograph, can I at least interview you? And somehow that gave her the green light to do it. Yeah. And we were able to do that, which was awesome. And, after that, we also went to Whitehall, New York, where Steve is.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and that was actually one of my, if not one of my favorite places in the world, because for cryptozoology, because there was just so much history in that place, and especially for being New York State, especially in the Adirondacks. That place is so wild. There's so much there's so many stories, and just the people there too, and especially when it comes with police officers, the history of having law enforcement seeing these creatures in New York State of places. So that's something
that got me, because most people think, when they think of New York or New York State, immediately in their mind pops New York City. Okay, and you're like, well, there's no trees there. What's going on? But when you get to some place like Whitehall or the Adirondacks, and you start looking around, you're like, oh my God, they've got some wilderness here, dude.
Mm-hmm. Well, they say it's like the Adirondacks. It's like you take Yosemite and all these other national parks, and it still wouldn't fit into that. Yeah, like
it's big.
Yeah, it's huge. So I started reaching out people around there. I actually took Paul Bartholomew's book, Monsters of the North Woods, and I was looking up, all the stories that Paul was writing in his book. I was able to contact Paul. Being able to talk to him, he's a really cool guy. I was able to meet Dan Gordon, who had his sighting, and luckily we were able to have a video interview of him before he unfortunately passed away. We also met Cliff Sparks at the Skinny Valley Country Club. He was really cool. And we just kept meeting all these people. Bill Brand, a lot of well-respected individuals in the field. And then, we also made a trip to Point Pleasant, where, we met a lot of people down there, like Jeff Walmsley from the Mothman Museum, and a handful of other really cool people. We met the Frick brothers. We met Faye, I believe her last name was DeWitt, Faye DeWitt. She had a sighting back in the 60s when the whole Mothman craze was going on. We had the opportunity just to go to these places. I mean, I was in high school at the time, and I really didn't care about, football or drinking or going to parties. That was just not my thing. To me, like, this was like me on drugs.
It kept you out of trouble, didn't it? That's good. A hobby like that is good, or like this is good. Keeps you out of the mess. But now I can't bring it up on screen, Jordan. But we got a question over here from Sean over in the chat, and he wants to know. It says, "Has Jordan ever explored Massachusetts? Have you ever been looking around Massachusetts?"
Recently, actually, I've talked to a few people, and I know the Bridgewater Triangle. That whole place is just a mecca for paranormal phenomena, and especially with Bigfoot, Thunderbirds, the Hockomock Swamp. I haven't really researched it, but I know there was a documentary they made called The Bridgewater Triangle, and I know that's sort of been one of the top places in the world for just that type of phenomena. I would love to. I mean, I'm actually hoping, once COVID finally, at least 90% of the crazy restrictions are down, we might make a trip up to New England for a few weeks and just kind of explore everywhere from, Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, hopefully Whitehall and those type of places. So, once COVID is finally, met its match, then hopefully we can fight off.
Well, yeah, that's the thing right now. I mean, it's safe to go out in the woods, but the only problem is in order to get there, you have to stop at gas stations, fill up. You got to get something to eat somewhere. So, yeah, it's still, even though we're like outdoors a lot, we're still in contact with a lot more people than we probably should be.
Right.
But, I think it'll eventually calm down a little bit. But now Jordan, I don't want to throw you on the.
I'm back.
Oh, welcome back, Steve. I was just about ready to put Jordan on the spot here. I don't want to, but
go right ahead. Put him on the spot.
Behind you there, Jordan, I'm seeing a cast, and it looks like a Bigfoot cast over your left shoulder. The other one. Yeah, yeah. What? Can you tell me anything about that? What is that? Is that just like a mock-up, or is it?
Yeah. Try to get it up here. This was actually given to me by Jody Cook from Ohio, and this was actually one of my first, if not this was my first cast that I received. I believe, I think it was in Jody's book, Bigfoot Encounters in Ohio, and this is one of the tracks I believe he found out in the field, and he actually, it's right behind me. I have a whole thing. This is actually this is a replica of the gorilla print, alleged gorilla print.
Right.
And I believe this was on the Monster Quest episode too.
Now that is cool.
Yeah, and I think Jimmy Chilcutt, he was examining this, and he predicted that this probably was a gorilla handprint. He definitely said this was 100%. But I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that.
Right.
But I mean, even something like this in a place called Ohio, and it's like, you probably think there's an escaped monkey or gorilla, or just that type of thing going on.
Yeah.
And it's kind of weird that even just with something like that happening, and then there's Bigfoot sightings of this large, hairy, ape-like creature being seen, while there's gorilla handprints all over the state. It's like you have to wonder sometimes.
Well, that is cool, man, and thank you for sharing those with us. I'm sorry to put you on the spot like that, but man, You have to understand, I'm kind of into those to track prints and casts, and
Right.
even copies of a print. It's fine by me. I just love to look at them.
Right. No, of course. I want to collect more, and I kind of want to have my own little museum here. And this is actually from a replica of Tom Slick expedition. This is the young little Yeti they found.
Wow. Cool.
Yeah. And this was given to me by Jeff Meldrum too, which is pretty cool.
That is cool.
Yeah. Yeah, because Tom Slick was one of the only I guess millionaires funding the entire expedition of the day.
Yes.
So, and I recently read his book too. I think Lauren Coleman wrote it.
Yeah.
You know, just that whole expedition that was going on. They found some interesting stuff, and I know that was like Peter Burns' early days too, as being a researcher.
Yeah, Tom Slick funded. Man, he bankrolled Peter Burns to go in the Himalayas, and that is so cool that you have one of those, a replica. I understand that. That's cool. And we do have. I can't put it up, but we do have another question in the chat. It's from B, and B wants to know, Jordan, what's the most amazing evidence of anything Bigfoot, Sasquatch, or paranormal you've obtained to date? Did you get that?
I wouldn't say I've had found much evidence, because the one thing I do regret is not being out in the field as much. And being here in Buffalo, New York, I mean, there's a couple places that allegedly have had activity, because I know south of me is Chautauqua County, and I know Steve knows of that place. They've actually had the Chautauqua Bigfoot conference a few years, and I know there's been sightings in and around that area too.
Well, I think B probably doesn't mean that you've found specifically on your own. Probably that you've come across, that other people may have seen. Like, is there any sort of evidence that you've seen that you thought was actually really cool?
Well, I think what's the stories when people are out, and then when you start hearing monkey chatter or just having rocks thrown in the woods. I mean, that to me, if you watch on a television program, they're probably doing it for ratings. Maybe not all of them, but there's a lot of stories. And I can even talk about a few stories I've had where people are walking and something with hands is throwing rocks. Right.
That's the thing. Okay. Yeah. No matter if you're in the woods, there's no wild animals specifically that's supposed to be in North America that can pick up a rock and hurl it at you.
Right. And you hear stories just like all the time in just different parts of the country where these things happen. And it just seems like maybe they're not intentionally trying to hurt you, but they're trying to discourage you from, being there. And I'm sure a lot of people have heard of that. I will say though, there was a time where this was actually during the Ohio Bigfoot conference where it was with my dad and I was with another researcher, and we were walking through one of the hills near the ravine. And I remember, and I can clearly recall, we heard what sounded like chest beating. Like, best way I can describe it is like taking a basketball and like slamming it on on the grass, just kind of
bump, bump. Okay.
It really sounded like chest beating or a gorilla beating its chest, and we all just looked at each other like, "What was that?" And of course, we didn't hear anything else after that, but that was something. And then the following year after that, I was with the same researcher again, and we were checking out this other area, and I believe it was the area where Don Keating shot that video where that little white figure was running in the distance. I believe that was in Guernsey County, Ohio.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And I don't remember.
Right. I think if you go back, you can probably find it. But we were in this one area, and I remember we were sort of going up towards this hillside, and then there was this opening where there were some picnic benches. And then the more you press on, there's this little patch of woods that kind of like, the best way I can describe it, it's like it kind of sucks you in. It's almost like the best way I can describe it. It's like Alice in Wonderland, perspective, where it really felt like the woods was just kind of sucking you in. It was like a vortex. It was weird. And we had what sounded like a rock thrown at us. You kind of just heard the, and that scared us. So we ran back to the guys, talked about what happened, heard nothing. And this was in an area, again, where there's been a lot of sightings. And so after a while, we started to head back to the cars, and we were going down this hill. And I believe Henry May was with me that night, too, so I'm sure he can tell that. And we were walking down, and what sounded like a huge, like maybe a rock about maybe a little bit bigger than a baseball, just started crushing down on the trees. Again, everybody just was freaking out, and we were wondering what the heck that was. Again, we didn't hear anything, we didn't smell anything, nothing like that. So again, and with stuff like that, you really need to know how the forest works. You need to understand the sounds you hear. You need to understand, that there's a lot of, brush, there's wind, there's all sorts of things. So can I say it's a Bigfoot? I would like to say, but I can't because we didn't see it. We didn't see a Bigfoot doing that.
That's the thing. I've heard a rock come through the woods one time, and you could hear it hitting branches and hitting leaves and stuff, and then it hit the side of a tree. And when it did, you could tell this was probably about 100 yards away, but it hit a tree, and when it hit that tree, it was a very solid thunk. It's like you could tell that was a pretty good sized rock. And then silence, and although, I didn't see anybody throw the rock, it kind of makes you wonder, whether nobody else there or who threw that rock. Somebody threw it. But, hey, Steve, are you back?
I am back.
All right.
And let me, if you notice that I've changed and we've lost a connection, that's because for some reason, after the show had started for some, whatever it was, my laptop charger decided not to work anymore.
Oh, wonderful. Yes. Well,
and what it was doing is I thought it might have been the outlet, and when I plugged it back in, it started charging, and it charged for about a minute, and then it stopped again.
Wow.
Now it's not charging at all.
Okay.
So I'm like, okay, it's the charger.
Whichever one you're using now, looks great. It's fine.
Well, it's the main computer when I pipe the show in. I just I have to. Luckily, the configuration I have, all I have to do is just basically yank the mic off the laptop, plug it into my ports here, and just push a button and disconnect another button and whammo.
Well, it wouldn't be fun if we didn't have a few technical difficulties every now and then,
No self-respecting Sasquatch would want to be seen in Cheektowaga, Lackawanna, Tonawanda, or them parts. Adirondacks, that's a different story.
Oh, yeah, don't get me started on that. Born and raised.
Now, David, although I love that comment's kind of really funny, we tend not to get political here, either side. We just stay out of politics.
Yeah, no politics.
Oh, yeah.
Best bet. We love everybody on the show.
Well, that's not necessarily true.
Well, we love most people.
Try to love people.
Yeah, all right. So, Jordan, I'm sorry. See, here's the story. This goes back because how old were you when I met you, Jordan?
15, I believe.
Yeah. And I don't know if we discussed that story yet.
I believe I remember clearly. This was the last day me and my dad were in the Adirondacks, so we were hanging around with Bill Brand filming some of his stuff, and he was showing us places. And then the last day before we went back home, we were waiting for Steve in a McDonald's parking lot, and it took about an hour or two for him to get there, and then he finally showed up. And then he's like, "Oh, I'm just gonna grab some food." And then, no, it was great. Steve, I remember you
because at the time I lived like an hour and 20 minutes away.
Right. I think it was Troy, right? Troy, New York.
Yeah, I was living in Troy at the time.
Yeah.
Oh.
Right. Cool. Yeah.
So that McDonald's does not exist anymore.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh wow! No, it was one of those fond memories I've had, and I remember we were following you up in one of your research areas high up near the Adirondacks, and you were showing us some of the areas around there, and I remember we shot some interviews of you, and I still have all the tapes from those days sitting right by me, and there's literally like probably 50 of them that still yet to be resurrected someday. I'm currently doing that now, but now there's companies that charge money to do that, so I'm trying to save money for that. But yeah, that was a good time. I remember that.
That was.
Steve, you may have to go back and watch the rerun of the show then, because I hit Jordan up about those casts he had in the background, and we had a show and tell, man, while you were gone. It was really cool.
I heard him. I was hearing you.
Okay.
I just had myself muted while I was. Well, I actually, believe it or not, not one cuss word.
Oh, well, that's nice. Congratulations, you're doing better.
So, Tack, our good friend Mike over there wants to know if you get out in Western New York at all, because I know Tack is based out of Western New York. So, and he is one of my team members too. So, I if you two make the connect, Mike, just he's on my Facebook page. Make a connection there, or I can throw you back into a chat. I know you were talking about some. I know B had asked about some of the most compelling things. So you've talked to a heck of a lot of people. You've talked to the Bindernagel, and you've talked to the late Dan Gordon, and you talked to Bill and Paul. Did you ever get to talk to Brian Goslin at all as well?
I've been working on that for so many years. Yeah. I remember the first time I tried. I know. I think I remember I called you, Steve. Now that you mentioned it, I think I did call Bill, and then I guess his brother passed away.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember that. And then that happened. So that was around the time where my dad and I were going out there. Yeah. Then the other time too. I believe I was talking to Paul Bartholomew, but no, we never did. And I've always been interested in Brian's story, just because of his background, of course.
Sure.
And obviously the area where he saw it. And I listened to a lot of his interviews, especially on podcasts, and you can tell just to this day it still affects him. You can hear the nervousness in his voice, and just the amount of, I guess I could say, trauma that this encounter really did to him.
Right. And Dan was a great guy. He would get very emotional about his sighting as well. And and unfortunately, the closer to the end of his life he got, the more emotionally he got. And I remember him at one of these town hall episodes of Finding Bigfoot. He was in Rutland, Vermont at that one. And I remember his voice quivering, and it was just that was the last time I'd seen him, and I think within like 4 or 5 months he was gone. Yeah. And I remember there was for a guy who had a heart attack, when he did, the years following, he was a lion of a man. He was just always there and doing it, and great hell's gonna freeze over now if Steve stops swearing. Yeah, filth and foul. But yeah, it was very sad to see him go. I wish, I really do wish that the came out while he was still alive here. Hopefully, and where he's at now, he knows the truth.
Right.
So,
he was a very nice guy, because I remember I was telling Chris during those days when trying to contact these people. I didn't, like, most, if not everybody from the Whitehall area, they didn't have emails. I couldn't find any contact info, so I had to go on whitepages.com, and you type in their name, and then their phone number would pop up. So I had to type in their name, hoping these were the actual Dan Gordons and Paul Bartholomew's.
And they were, yep.
Yeah, they were, and made those calls, and luckily, you were able to meet them and interview them. And Dan was such a nice guy. Like, especially, I remember, after we talked to Paul, we were walking towards Danny's house, which is right down the street, and he was like, Jordan, and just super nice, just as if like I knew the guy. And he really warmed up to me and my dad. And after we interviewed him, we just talked like for hours, and then made another trip up to the Adirondacks. And we weren't even planning on it, but then we saw Dan on his porch just sitting there, and then like, let's go up to him. So we just had another nice conversation, and he was like, "Yeah, man, hey, I can take you on my boat if you want." So it was so nice, and those were the moments too where like you really connected with these people, especially when you're into a subject like this, and they've had these incredible stories, and once they know you and they become your friend, like, to me that is so rewarding. And I really miss those days, and meeting Dan and that whole thing. So I'm hoping to make more memories, but I really that's one of the things, if not probably the top number one thing I enjoy about doing documentary filmmaking, specifically in the cryptid world. So that to me is awesome.
And Jordan, you said one thing. Sometimes it still is hard to get in touch with people, to find out who somebody was, or actually their phone number. And about, I don't know, probably about 10 years ago, I got somebody had told me, hey, you need to talk with, like, I'm just going to use the last name rather, like the Smith people over on, they've got a farm over on Green River, and they have a lot of sightings, or they've had a lot of sightings over the years over there. So, well, who is it? I don't know, there's some Smith people. Okay. So we get on the phone, and we get the phone book and open it up, and we start calling Smiths. Okay. Adam Smith, Adam. Hello, this is it, Chris Bennett. Yeah, y'all have a property over on Green River? No? Okay, thank you. Adam, Aaron, you just keep on going, Smith, until finally you get the right one. Like, yeah, I got some property over there,
And then the wife sees the phone bill.
Yeah.
That was back in the day when you used to dial the phones,
Hey, yeah, man. I mean, up until like last year, my mother still had one of those. She had one of those where it gives you your finger the right to rack around. You tick, 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 tick. That was cool. Oh,
B has a question. Boy, she even puts the little emojis to give it a little kick.
Thanks, B.
Yeah, don't give out names. Well, if you want to give out names, that'll be up to you. But have you ever felt someone you interviewed was plain lying?
I haven't. No. I feel the people I reached out to, I knew, like, to an extent that they really experienced something. I guess I gotta watch my words right here, but I guess I can say once you go to some of these conferences and some of the people that you talk to, and then they're like, "Hey, come over here, let me show you something," and then they
wait, Jordan, you have been to the Chautauqua Lake Bigfoot Conference, have you not? Okay, so were you cornered? Hold on, by the woman with the pictures in quotes of the Bigfoot near her house, raiding the cooler. And I'm looking at it going, I see the cooler, I see the grass, I see the house. Where's the Bigfoot? Well, they're cloaked. I'm like, well, how do you see him?
They were cloaked.
They were cloaked. Hey, hang on. You know what? Here, watch this. I'm going to cloak. Watch this. I'm going to cloak. Everybody, for the sake, we haven't done this where I can actually cloak. Watch this. Now watch. This is going to be magical.
Oh. Wow. He's cloaked.
Okay, so here I am. I'm still here, but you can't see me now. You see,
Oh,
I will
okay.
do the rest of the show cloaked.
Okay. Hey, I think I can do that too. Oh
You
man.
walk through a portal.
Well,
But not quite as effective as me.
You're gonna, that's something. That's something I've come to accept, though, Steve. People, you're going to talk to some people that really straight up they saw something and something's going on. Okay, whether they misidentified a bear or something, you could tell they did see something. You don't know what, but they saw something.
Yeah.
And then you're going to talk to people like, hey man, come on over here. I got a story to tell you. And then, you could tell those guys, well, this dude's pulling my leg. But, I'll do them courtesy of listening to them and everything. And grasshopper. Oh, God. Okay, yeah. Only the guest remained, and then...
then the guest cloaks.
We'll do a cloak show.
Everybody's talking. There's 3 empty chairs.
We'll do the cloak show. That sounds good.
Oh God.
Oh,
and people. See, here's the amazing thing. People will bitch about this kind of foolery, like we're taking ourselves too seriously, or not taking the subject seriously enough. Well, we do take it seriously. We do have a lot of serious points, but after all, it's just Bigfoot. Let's have a little fun too. This is a show. We can't. I've always said this. This is not your PBS show where you hear, like the PBS, and you see the warbling bird flying across the. No, we don't do that like here. So we have fun.
Steve, could you put a mixed question up there, because I think it's a pretty valid question regarding the cloaking. The Sasquatch use Klingon cloaking devices or Romulan? That is a valid question, because if they can really cloak, it's probably one or the other.
Or Harry Potter's clerk.
Oh, well.
Oh, yes. And Ken makes the great thing. That is a great comment. The believer and the knower. Like you talk to the folks that have all this stuff, and it's kind of funny how this stuff comes. Yeah, you're right. It's a hobby. Lighten up. I agree, David. But how this all comes full circle. Conversation earlier about the guy having the conversations with the Sasquatch and the clan, as he called it. They say, well, I'm not a believer, I'm a knower. And that is a very when you start hearing those kind of things, you're like, oh boy, here we go. That's generally that's generally.
You got to look at it this way too. There's some people that have seen these creatures and they know they exist, so they're not really believers. They know they exist. I'm in that category. I know they exist.
Well, yeah, but it's a completely. What I mean is that I'm not a believer. I'm a knower. It's like you always get that comment, and it's like, hey, hang on, let me get the book out on how. All right, first they're gonna say this, check, and they're gonna say this, check. Okay, now, somebody wants to go with them. They're gonna say they're not ready for. Oh, there it is. Yep, they're not ready for it.
But there's a difference, though.
Or you're not pure of heart. Yeah, Mr. Bennett, you cannot see them because you're not pure of heart.
Right.
And I love the people. that don't know me. That don't know that I have sightings.
Yeah.
Right? And when they say, well, you'll never see them because you're too, really? Oh, boy.
Well, those are the people that are going to, they want you to believe them. They want you to believe, but, they don't really need you to see it. You know what I mean? That you're not going to be able to see it. You just have to take their advice, their word.
Yeah.
that it exists, but you're not going to see it. But they see it every day, so you just have to believe them. I guess the biggest difference between being a knower of that type and somebody's actually seen it is I don't care if somebody else doesn't believe it or not. It doesn't matter. I tell everybody, don't believe it until you see it yourself. And that is the safest way. Do not believe it until you see it yourself. Remain a skeptic until you see one. And after you see one, then you can know, okay? But you can't go around, after you see one, you can't go around telling everybody, oh, yeah, they really do exist, because nobody's going to believe you.
Okay. Boys and girls, here comes some questions. So let's get to the question. Okay, so question for Jordan. In general, are there areas in upstate New York that you find have a higher activity? Use the Finger Lakes as a marker. East, west.
Slightly south.
Slightly south.
No.
Well, it seems like even where I am, so like I'm in Western New York, so I'm basically at the little tip of Lake Erie where Toronto is. So basically that's where I get all the snow. And south of me is Chautauqua and Cattaraugus counties, and I would say those are the more rural areas in Western New York that, in my opinion, if you go to places like Pennsylvania or Ohio, there's areas where, in my mind, a Sasquatch is likely to exist. As much a bear is, it could exist here. And I always wonder too, where in these specific areas, how many sightings go reported and how many sightings don't get reported. And especially if you got a place like the Adirondacks, which just has so many millions of acres, and then obviously, you have Finger Lakes. So if you have woods, water, and hills, you have a creature, most likely.
Yep.
But at the same time, if you're in the biological state of thinking this is a real ape-like creature, then it has to exist in areas where, again, there's wood, water, and hills, and food. So it could possibly, and I'm at a point now too where I guess we can go into stick structures, but I know that's been held to a high degree in some researchers. I myself don't really hold to that degree at all, not even at all anymore, because I've seen some crazy impressive stick structures in the most suburban area you could ever see, in a little patch of woods.
Yep.
And I'm like, that is crazy. Even just like knowing how, it just falls from natural, consequences from storms, wind, whatever.
Right.
I don't hold to something like that with any value anymore. I just don't.
Yeah. I really think that at some point, because you when you first started doing this, you were talking to all the folks that have been doing this for a while. So you have those values. This is what we look for. We look for, we look for tracks. We look for sign that they went through an area. We look for scat, hair, stuff like that. And all of a sudden this changed to, all these tree breaks and tree bends and all this stuff that really doesn't fit any of the stuff prior to like 1980. There were tree breaks, but let me quantify that. When people talked about tree breaks, they were talking to it similarly to an animal, a known animal, into the wilderness, that's how you track them. Is okay, there's a broken branch, and you can see the line of broken branches that are going through the forest. That is how you track, and that's the kind of evidence you look to support. But when I see a pile of sticks, we don't know that it wasn't an old beaver dam, that it wasn't a human making that. To say it's arbitrarily a Sasquatch, well, look at these tree bends. It's got to be. Has anybody seen a Sasquatch make a tree bend? I doubt it, because it takes weeks for a tree to grow that way. And that's the most disconcerting thing. Nobody's ever seen one, bending a tree or any of that nonsense.
Yeah.
So we're just making the same thing with tree knocking. No offense, but tree knocking. I've heard trees crack and pop, especially during the winter months. Sounds like a tree knot. They're cracking because the tree itself is expanding and contracting because of the weather. And then you'll hear this pop because it's either getting too hot or too cold, or maybe it was cold and it's warming up, or maybe it's, it's warm and it's getting cold. So they make these pops naturally. So, the ones that I find more interesting are the multiple hit ones. But let's get into another question. Let's see. Tommy John asks, how do they never slip up and get caught on trail cam? All the satellite cameras, drone cameras, etc., yet still never seen. Well, here's my issue. Here's my issue with that. And if you don't mind, I'll take a first stab, and I'll pass it around to everybody else here on the show. But Alan Gaines made a good comment saying, given the trail camera is like a needle in a haystack too. You're looking for a little piece of wide angle for about 40 feet in an area that's really immense. However, I do believe there are at least a couple of legitimate trail cam photos out there. So, especially one I worked up in Vermont. And to me, how can you say that they're never seen on trail cameras? There's a lot of people putting trail camera pictures out there, and 99% of them are bunk. But I've seen a couple that go, ain't that something? So no satellite images, because they don't shoot through the trees. I don't think they shoot satellite pictures when? During the day. I believe they're nocturnal primarily. And let's also face fact too that, if you're shooting all this, go on Google Earth, and if you notice in some of these areas of woods and forests, they're not very detailed. They're only taking a very low amount of detail because they don't need the detail of it like over a city. That's when you get the clearer shots, but you go over certain areas and you try to zoom in and it gets blurry real fast because they're not taking detailed shots of those areas. They're not livable areas or roaded areas where Google Maps needs to concentrate. Yeah. I'm trying to, even Pripyat, if you go to Google Earth, even Pripyat kind of blocky because it's not a lived area anymore.
But I'll tell you what, though, here's what I believe, Steve. I believe that our military has satellites that could do the job, that actually could break through the canopy and see, but I don't think there's any way to get them to task them to do that.
Well, I don't think they can break through the canopy, not unless they're thermal.
Well, that's the thing, yeah.
Yeah. But it's funny. Chris starts, are we on the blue collar comedy tour? I believe that if you have, 5 tires on your front lawn and there have flowers in the middle of them, you might be a redneck. Anyway. Anyway. I don't know, Jordan, take a shot at that. What do you think?
I think, it's hard because I would like to say that, it's easy to catch one on camera, which has been the most rarest species on Earth, except for 1967. But I think these things would have to have a crazy amount of intelligence to understand its surroundings. And you hear about stories where these things are seen and then they're gone in less than 2 or 3 seconds, as if like they disappear. Yeah. And to me, I think they come to a place where they understand their surroundings. They know the environment that they're in. They are masters of disguise in that sense. So I think whenever, if they are the alpha male of the woods, which according to a lot of different stories, you hear about how a lot of the animals react when these things are around, and they know, what is around them. They know what is in their territory. They know, what a camera is. Maybe they don't exactly know what a camera is per se, but they know, when their territory is being infringed by I guess human hands or something. So in my opinion, if these things are biological entities, I think that they have to be the masters of the forest. They just need to be the king of their ground. That's just the way I see it. Unless you want to go into the other side. I always think if you go back to places like the Chestnut Ridge with Stan Gordon, and all the sightings and stories that come out of there. I love Stan. I talked to Stan a few months ago, and I've always been interested in that particular part of Pennsylvania. And you hear more of just I wouldn't say crazy, but just the out there type stories with strange lights and seeing these creatures at the same time, almost like they have some sort of disappearing ability to come here and there, and then just that whole wheel of just strange phenomena. So to me, it just seems that these things have a high intelligence where they are able to become the alpha of the surroundings. Yep. And again, they have to be. I just think that's the way it goes.
I love Stan too, but he is so hooked on this UFO Bigfoot connection. And it's like, because we don't send our astronauts into an atmosphere naked. And that's my biggest beef with the whole thing. We know, there's no protection, no protective suits. Yes, there's been Bigfoot seen with them, but heck, big UFOs were seen with cows during the cattle mutilation phases. We never suspected ever that a cow was an alien. And
maybe their suits are cloaked.
Could be. Could be. Let's see. I'm trying to go down the list here. There's a few more.
The chat room is hopping.
Always is.
Yeah. We always have the best audience. You guys are sharp.
B, I think, what are your thoughts on those huge, intricate tree structures that are found in Colorado and documented many incredible videos from Mark Abel, aka Colorado Bigfoot? Like I said, I think that, as far as we'll pass it to Jordan, but I think that it's nonsense because we've never seen a Bigfoot making a tree structure. So, I just don't think, and I know we're catching up to some of these comments, and there's a lot. So, what are your beliefs of where they sleep? They sleep on the ground, or a hammock. No hammock. But I believe that they sleep in the ground, and I don't believe they sleep in caves unless there is an alternative exit, because I don't think they back themselves into a corner knowingly. Trying to also, I think they may sleep in the high grounds during the day or at night or whenever they sleep, probably in the day, and they come. And people ask, well, why are they nocturnal if there's pictures in the daytime? Well, Tommy says all footage, Freeman film, all daytime footage are for a nocturnal. But the Patterson Gimlin film and the Freeman film are not the only footage.
Right.
I've got a thermal that was taken at 9 plus PM at night in the fall. And it gets dark, in the fall here, probably at like 7 o'clock. By 7 o'clock, your headlights. So I really don't think. I have a picture of a porcupine in the daytime. I've seen fox in the daytime. I've seen coyotes in the daytime, but they are all primarily nocturnal animals. Yeah. And the fact is, if you look it up, that animals also do rummage around during the day, just not as frequently.
Yeah.
So that's my thought on that. Otherwise, most of the porcupine footage pictures you see, they're in the daytime. Why? Because we're diurnal. Or we don't have the equipment photograph at nighttime. Not everybody readily has equipment to photograph at night. Only the researchers. And how many researchers are out there, or how many researchers have their equipment deployed at any given time? You know, people talk about, you know, well, we have all these trail cameras and all this other stuff. Well, how often is my equipment deployed? Number one, I'm not going to deploy it on public land because it'll get swiped. You know, how often will we, you know, you got to have really special circumstances really to deploy it on private land. And how often is it there? There are some folks that do. Yeah, there's a few people that do get to deploy them for months at a time, but a few and far between. So I don't think that holds any, you know, at all. And then somebody will say, well, with all these cameras on, you know, on the phones, and, you know, why aren't we getting more pictures? Well, that's why we're getting more blob squatches, because digital technology is not made for taking pictures of something standing in the middle of the woods.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, you know, I think it's perfectly reasonable to go out during the daylight hours when you're looking for a sighting, or when you're hoping to have a sighting. You know, I don't recommend anybody go out at night, especially if you're in an area that's snaky. Now, in Kentucky, you know, we got some snakes, baby. I mean, if you jump off on the side of the road, if there's some tall grass over there, you run over in the grass and come back, you're going to have rattlesnakes hanging off both legs. Really. I mean, we've got some snakes. So it's better to go during the daylight, so, you know, you don't step on one of your little legless buddies there and get a bite.
So Eric P. Over on YouTube, welcome to the show, Eric P.
Well,
ask Jordan if he believes in a cover-up.
Oh man. Well, let me give you some backstory before I say anything. You know, after the whole you know, after my Cryptid Hunt, cryptozoology days, you know, I was a little bit burnt out, and you know, I was in high school, and you know, I was chasing girls, I was in college, I was, you know, doing the whole thing, and you know, I've always had an interest, but it was sort of just in the back burner. I just kind of watched it from afar. And then, you know, once, you know, you're in your 20s, you know, you start questioning things. You start following different ideas, you know, religion and that sort of thing. You're trying to find purpose in life. And, you know, I was at a place when I was 19 where, you know, I focused heavily on like just religion, God, spirituality. And, you know, I was just trying to find some meaning and purpose. And at first it was great. But then over time, that sort of, some of the ideas that I was being taught were really starting to affect me. And a lot of it had to be shared with the conspiracy side of things. So, like, if you follow certain religious groups, they believe highly in, you know, government cover-ups, in the Illuminati, in secret societies, and that sort of thing. And I know sometimes in the paranormal and even the Bigfoot field, you know, some people have those connections. And I really became obsessed over that, just because I'm like, this makes sense. You know, you start questioning all the crazy things about the moon landing, you know, all these other conspiracy theories, the JFK assassination, all that. It just becomes like a snowball effect, and you kind of follow this rabbit hole, and you just start learning all these other things. And of course, they don't come from credible sources; they all come from the internet. But
right, yeah.
You know, it's like, oh, that professor said this, or this really, you know, important person said this in their book about UFOs or whatever. So, you know, I try not to hold a conspiracy mind or a cover-up mind, just because I think it's so easy. And I think we put a lot of faith in the government when the government really doesn't have – they can't even handle the best things in life. So, you know, you can call it the deep state maybe, but, you know, I think when it comes to, like, Bigfoot, like, let's say, and this is my opinion, and obviously it might change over time. You know, my opinions do change. I don't hold to one thing. I just, you know, I'm growing in life, as many people are. I think if a body is found, I think if there is evidence for these creatures, even if there's the body, I still don't think it will be accepted. I think a lot of the scientists will refuse to look at it. That's just my opinion.
Very well could be. Yeah.
And I think because of ego, I think because of, just status, I think because of money, I think because of laws, taxes, and certain things will really hold back that interest in something like the Sasquatch or a body or any sort of biology. So it could be that, the government knows about it. I don't know. I would think they do to some degree, possibly. I mean, you can talk to certain people and they would have their own opinions, but, I think personally that they do know they exist, but they don't acknowledge them.
Exactly.
Public knowledge, just because, you can go into the whole mountain lion idea.
Yeah.
There's mountain lions in areas where they're not supposed to, and they're not going to talk about it because they want to keep the tourism and etc. So it just becomes
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. Like I said, it's not big enough potatoes for them to spend millions of dollars to cover it up. Like, they sent the military in to catch all the bodies around St. Helens, and there's a sergeant or this military man that talks about that. Hey, maybe I should use my Alex Jones voice for this. So anyway, they send the guy in down, and no.
Well,
that's funny. I didn't realize, Jordan, I could do Alex Jones until about 3 weeks ago. All of a sudden, I started going, listen, the Illuminati have this all tied up, you see, and it's a Bilderberg conspiracy, and they all the Bigfoot go down and they dance around Moloch. Anyway, I'm sorry.
But let me say that, because those were the sort of ideas, that a lot of those groups were following, like Moloch, Bohemian Grove, the Bilderberg Group, like that sort of thing, and it just becomes a whole snowball effect.
Becomes a rabbit hole. Jordan, right. It becomes a rabbit hole.
Right. And I just say, be careful of where you're following that.
It's like, boy, if anything wants to be, overcomplicated more. So I don't think they're spending any money. I think you're right. They try to, like they may, hey, there's some tracks over here, and they'll go over and they'll sweep them out because they don't want the publicity. And I really think it has nothing to do because of any great, but it's because all about the bucks, the greenbacks. Yeah. They don't want to,
exactly.
The spotted owl. Look what that did for the lumber industry for a long time. So,
dude, anything to make sure the tourist dollars keep coming in. That's what it mainly is.
So, but Bigfoot brings in the tourists. They just want to protect that logging industry.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah, that's why. Why do you think Whitehall embraced it? They're like, oh, money.
Yeah,
it's the appearance because they're so human-like, and I think once that becomes public knowledge, there's going to be activist groups that are going to treat them like us,
Well, why wouldn't they be special? I mean, look right. as bass backwards as a lot of the continent of Africa has been with all their wars and stuff like that. They'll spend a lot of money to protect the gorillas. So imagine what they'll do in a place, with a robust civilization as ours, where right. All this infrastructure rather, and that's what I mean by robustness.
Dude,
so Mick is tendering.
Oh wow! Oh man, no. I don't think I could do that, man. Believe me, 2 hours. Sometimes I'll have to shut the camera off and get up. This is way too much for me now already. But we appreciate the sympathy. I really do. With these government cover-up deals, I don't know about that, but I know they do protect the tourist industry. And we had something similar happen here years ago. I live over near Mammoth Cave National Park, and there were reports of a cougar in the park, sightings of a cougar. And they played it off, man. They played it off. They said, oh, no, there's no cougar here. No. The park superintendent, no. They were getting reports every week. No, there's nothing to it. And then finally, one morning, one goes across the parking lot in the main office and hops up on somebody's car. And so the employees go in there and say, dude, look, in the parking lot, there's a cougar. And so they finally took out an ad in I think it was the Park City newspaper that said, it has come to our attention that there have been some possible sightings of a large cat in the area. So here's what to do in case you see one. If you're confronted, make yourself large, and it went through the whole detail. What to do.
We're watching, Chris. I don't know if you're looking to the left. We're watching a cougar attack right here.
Spot on.
A cougar. Well, I don't think it was that kind of cougar, but anyway, it came around to them. They wouldn't accept it. No. The superintendent, because he didn't want to mess with the tourism dollars coming in. We're talking millions of people. So no. There's no cougar. There was no cougar until it was when it went into the parking lot, and they said, "My God, there is one." They had to come clean about it. But what are the odds of it coming into the parking lot?
Well, yeah. I mean, there's certain things like that. Well, we had the shooting of the alleged Bigfoot in Horse Cave.
Yeah.
Right. And again, what they want to avoid is a bunch of people showing up with guns.
Right.
Agenda per se as maybe a community that wants to bring, a community government like Whitehall or, Bishopville has a Lizard Man Festival. I'm sure there's there may be a Falk Monster Fest that I'm not aware of, but, every single time, they have their own different reasoning. And that's why I think, the National Park Service kind of discredits it or tries to not acknowledge it because it would bring the wrong types of people into the park that they would want.
Right.
Yeah. And communities will embrace it because, especially if they're economically strapped to bring in tourists and to bring in, gift shops and have little festivals and stuff like that. It doesn't make it wrong necessarily in either case, because let's think about it. We may sit there and say, well, hey, you know what? I don't want a bunch of gun nuts running around a national park looking for a Bigfoot.
Right.
Makes sense. As researchers, we should know better.
Yeah.
And you know what? And Eric says there is an undercover footage of government officials talking about the Beast of Brushy Creek clip. I will check it out. And you know what, Eric? I'm gonna note that, and maybe I'll take a look at it and we'll talk about it next week. That'd be kind of cool talking about that. We'll talk. Hey, that's an idea. Let's talk about cover-ups next week.
Yeah. But it's interesting to note that the guy that fired his gun supposedly at the Bigfoot, he was not prosecuted for that. And when you ask, and I have asked, when you ask any of the rangers over there, they'll just send you over to the media people for the park, and I can't remember what the girl's name is, but. And then, you won't get nothing but a press release.
Her name is Helen Hunt. So if you want information on Bigfoot, go to Helen Hunt.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Native American tribes historically used blinds for hunting. I thought they used them for bait.
Well, I don't know.
Hey, Chris, did you miss that joke?
What? I was reading the chat. What'd you say? I'm sorry.
I said Native American tribes historically used blinds for hunting.
Yeah.
What did I say? I thought they used them for bait.
Oh God!
Remember your Sasquatch safety. If you're being chased by a Sasquatch, you only need to run as fast as the slowest person.
That's right. Make sure your shoes are well fastened, laces tied tight.
That's why you always bring somebody out of shape to the Bigfoot hunt. That way you can outrun them in case you need.
Oh, that's terrible.
Terribly funny though.
Yeah, that's like the two guys getting ready to run for the bear, and the one guy's tying his shoes up real tight. So what are you doing? There's a bear back there. You can't outrun that bear. You don't have to outrun the bear. Yeah, I don't have to outrun the bear. Oh man.
Yeah. Here's another. I'm thinking about bear safety. You know, it's like, you know, the difference between black bear droppings and grizzly bear droppings. And remember, we're always supposed to carry bear mace, and also wear bells. You know, because it scares the, you know. So, you know, black bear scat has little berries and nuts in it, and grizzly bear scat, you know, usually has bells and smells like pepper. So,
yeah. Oh no, that would be terrible.
Should we put the cougar video back?
Hey, you know what? Honestly, bears scare me more than Bigfoot. They really do.
You know what scares me more than bears?
What?
Moose.
Oh yeah, I guess so. But you know, there's no chance of me running into one of them here. But
do you know I live about 5 miles from a moose crossing sign?
Oh gosh.
Yeah, they're actually. I live very close to the Middle Grove State Forest, the Lake Desolation State Forest, and the Gagetown State Forest, and especially in Desolation, there's up there.
Yeah.
So moose. Yeah.
No moose in Kentucky, but you know they do have bears. And
I don't know. I've been to the Old Country Buffet in Kentucky, and boy, there's a couple there. You know. Sorry, Chris. I just said it for that.
You may have saw a Sasquatch in there too.
I did. It was standing next to the moose and the cougar.
But you know, in this area, okay, the bears they're not around here. They don't hang out here anymore. I think they've been hunted just almost to extinction on the western side of the state.
Well, they heard Tennessee has better food.
Maybe. On the eastern side of the state, though, oh yeah, man, they're but they're starting to work their way back across here, you know. So we're getting a few sightings every now and then of bears, and you know, I'm afraid of bears because you know there's not that many stories of Bigfoot killing somebody and eating them.
But you know, just rub their belly and they roll right over and rub their belly. You know.
With bears, you know, it happens. People die and they get eaten by bears.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's just something to think about if you're out walking, especially in an area where these things are at, you know, be careful.
It's always interesting, too. It's like, you know, when someone has a Sasquatch sighting, you always hear about, like, the intense fear and the amount of just dread that someone feels. But obviously, if you see a mother bear and her cubs, that same fear is probably going to, you know, spring up as well. And you run into that.
Yeah.
Hey, welcome, Curious Cryptid. If Bigfoot kills me, eats me, I'm not telling anybody. Actually, I would love a Bigfoot to eat part of me. That way, I can be the piece of physical evidence. Hey, I'm the evidence. Look, my arm is gone. Bigfoot ate it.
Oh God.
But
no, just
I don't want to end up like the bear whisperer there, the guy that. You know, not only did he get himself eaten, but he got his girlfriend eaten too.
Well, oh my God. Well, you know, I've ran up on about every kind of animal that's you know native to this area, and none of them scared me. You know, except one, and that was in New Mexico. The bear wasn't even in here in Kentucky. It was in New Mexico. I ran up on one, or he ran up on me, and it scared me to death because I knew, oh God, this dude's going to eat me. So you know, I'm afraid of bears.
And I guess Sean Godet asked if is Whitehall BS, and no, it's not. Not in the least.
Whitehall was a really we're talking police witnesses and stuff there. That's one of the better sightings documented.
And those were just the two police officers that came forward. You know, people forget that prior to that incident, there was a state trooper, a town police officer, and a sheriff that had all seen something from a distance. The article says they were all able to see the creature, but at a distance. So yeah,
that's I got to say that's one of the better documented sightings. Among officials, people that are trained in observing.
Well, you know what ended up happening is like I said, there's certain areas of the country which have a lot of sightings, and they're law enforcement is seeing stuff, but they don't say stuff because much akin to like, now only recently I should say, a pilot would never mention a UFO. Hey, I saw a UFO. No, they would be afraid they would be mocked and blacklisted and all that wonderful stuff. Well, that's how law enforcement felt for all these years, and they still are. You saw a Bigfoot? Come on, you're crazy. You know what that's going to do to your credibility on the stand?
Yeah. When you go in for your routine psych eval and you tell them you've seen a Bigfoot, okay, they're gonna start writing stuff down about you. Yeah.
But here's the fact of that is, I've testified in court. Nobody's ever brought that up. Never once. So. It's kind of a non sequitur. It's a phony belief. A lot of it. Somebody's going to bring up your crowd. He says, but nobody's ever going to say that. Did the activity move to Lake George? No, only during the summer. Oh no, I'm sorry. Those are Canadians. No, the activity didn't move to Lake George. Absolutely not. Lake George is actually a very small. And the Lake George Village only is probably about a mile long, and it's primarily a very maybe a 3 mile wide by 1 mile long strip. It's not a very large community. Lake George community. If you're talking about the lake, is there some activity along one side or another of Lake George occasionally? And there's been some very interesting, there was one particular case in Lake George where it was actually on one of the islands that people, heard like these monkey-like sounds on one of the islands of Lake George that are out in the middle, or not the middle, but on pretty close to the side. So could it swim out there? Possibly. And that's a whole nother discussion. Can a Sasquatch swim?
Oh yeah.
Don't know. I
don't think they do. I don't think so.
And then you have the other, as Mick says, even some of the Whitehall locals aren't to be messed with. Oh yeah. I mean, there's people in Whitehall that believe it. There's people that don't believe it vehemently. All these people are crazy. They're just doing it for tourism or, one thing or the other. Yeah. Funny thing is, I remember Brian telling me about a story about one particular gentleman always used to make fun of him about, see any Bigfoot lately? And he just discovered, a few years ago, the guy was selling Sasquatch merchandise in his store. Like, well, if you don't believe in it, if you're sitting there making fun of me, you're selling, to me, that's so disingenuous. I
can't begrudge the guy for trying to make a buck,
I can if he's making fun of people.
Well, sure. I bet people do it every day. They do.
And the answer to that is yes. Always.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's been a time I haven't heard of at least one or two stories coming out of Whitehall.
Yeah.
Our owls can sound like monkeys. Yes, they can a little bit.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You got to have a very tuneful ear.
It's the Strix rufipes, or I say rufipes, but it could be Strix rufipes. Owls family sound like a herd of monkeys. They do.
And Jeremy says, if Bigfoot were real, we'd have plenty of footage from cams. Not necessarily, because the cams aren't built for taking pictures in the middle of woods. So sorry, that just isn't real. That is not a correct comment. Just as much as if
it's an argument,
It's an argument.
Were real, we'd have pictures of them by now. Well, there are pictures,
Yeah, there are certainly are pictures.
Maybe some of those are real, maybe not. All it takes is one. Like out of the thousands and thousands and thousands of sightings, it doesn't take a percentage of them to be right. It only takes one.
Right, exactly, and that's the thing people don't understand is that we had a better chance of getting pictures of a Bigfoot in the 70s and 80s and part of the 90s with do now, because you get people with blob squatches that actually have had sightings. They're like, there it is, I took a picture of it, but the picture isn't that great. um is Whitehall so known there are more hoaxers, Jordan? Well, just so you know, Sean, I'm the guy that does a lot of investigating for the last 30 years up at Whitehall. Not Jordan. Jordan's been all over the place in New York and around Pennsylvania too, as well, doing stuff. We got to talk about your upcoming project too.
Sure.
We got to get that rolling too. Are there more hoaxers? No, I don't. There. So here's the thing. I knew of one guy that was hoaxing. We learned of it probably in 2012, and he was making tracks. Fortunately, he didn't start making tracks until well after I discovered my tracks. And my tracks we actually heard the footprints there and smelled it and experienced some audible stuff while that was all going on. The tracks were actually only about 40 feet to our north where they were made, because we could hear it walking around us. But as far as you
showed me some pictures of some fake tracks that guys
right. And I think that guy now has since stopped because maybe he's still going on. I don't really look for track evidence normally because in New York you don't find. The only reason why I looked for it that particular day was because of what I had heard. As far as just looking for tracks arbitrarily, I look, but I don't. We scrutinize them pretty well. But I think that guy. I don't think he's doing it anymore. If he is, he's been doing it for the better part. I think it started in 2012. He started doing that. But truthfully, being out there in 2012 and 2013, we found one track, but it was a juvenile track, and we had a witness to that one.
Yeah, cool.
So we knew where to look, and it was really close to our camp. But as far as any miscellaneous tracks now.
I think it's common sense to realize though that in an area that's really hot, you're going to have more hoaxers drawn to that area, specifically because there've been more sightings there. But the only thing is the hoaxers are missing out on is none of them are real good at anatomy, and we can glance if some of these guys out working the field have seen valid, real deal Bigfoot tracks. So we and they know exactly what they look like. So if you put something on the ground that's not kosher, all it takes is a glance, and everybody that's seen one that knows what it looks like is going to say, it's a fake. look, this is there, this is it, this is wrong, that's wrong, that's a fake. And that's one reason why I wouldn't put any good tracks cast up on the internet or any photos of them for anybody to see. I had some people asking me to see some photos of some tracks a few years back, and I knew why they wanted them, because they wanted to make casts, and they wanted to make things to try to hoax people better. But we don't do that. We don't feed the hoaxers. No.
And it's hard to find tracks as well, because I know I remember Steve saying too that New York is full of leaf litter, and especially with especially fall right now, it's almost impossible unless you find a good soil ground. But sometimes you just have to be at the right place at the right time.
Yeah, they're not as easy to find as people might think. And if you got tracks going from a roadway, right there where you drive by, and there they are by the car. If they're put someplace that's conveniently defined, well, that was done for convenience. It's pretty easy to put that together too. Oh, the chat room is hopping.
Jerry says he has a crystal Dogman shapeshifter switch for sale. Well, that's wonderful because I myself have a very doubtful nature of the Dogman. Very much so, because you can't hybridize a human with a canine.
Yeah.
And it makes...
You know, well, I don't knock people for saying it, though, Steve, because it could very well just be a misidentification, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. I just don't think that, you know, I have a big doubt in a Dogman. I just do. Could it be something other than an actual physical creature? No, it could be something paranormal. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, because I do believe in the paranormal. I don't believe it's anything to do with Bigfoot, unless it may be some of those type of weird type of sightings where I don't believe it's anything cryptid at all. So, you know, it is what it is. There's people that investigate that and they want to believe it. They have a right to believe it. Absolutely.
Ron.
Woof.
Yeah, woof. Ron, welcome. Yeah, Ron's in the house. He likes dropping in on us.
Welcome, Ron.
But I don't get the Dogman. I mean, as much as I'd like to believe it.
Pat says it's kangaroos. I'm convinced.
Yeah, I don't know. It's all started. You know, a lot of that started with the Gable film, which eventually turned out to be a hoax anyway.
Yeah.
It seems to me like even with the Dogman stuff, it kind of like just from what I've seen from things online, a lot of people talk about the Dogman more. It seems like there's been a high popularity in just sightings and groups. Even in the most like 2 to 3 years, I've just kind of seen the popularity of this thing just kind of skyrocket. Even though it's like you never really hear about it because Bigfoot's been like the only hair covered popular creature in America, but now like this Dogman thing, I've heard like sightings in Ohio. Someone even told me that there's more Dogman sightings now than there are Bigfoot recently.
Probably.
Yeah, I'm not going to say no. I mean, I'm interested regardless of just the actual story and just what's going on. So
it's kind of weird because you know, out of all the cryptids, you know, like Dogman, you know, lake monsters for the most part, I think, you know, there's so many things on the water that can be misidentified.
Right.
There are some pictures, but are they real? Are they something else? You know, when I went to Loch Ness, I debunked one. You know, it was very clearly a reflection. And I was tipped off at that, and I waited at the right time, and I got almost the identical pictures the guy had gotten. And Jeremy, you're absolutely right, man. Werewolves date back to the 11th century. It's not just an American thing. Yeah. Absolutely right. You know, so I have a lot of doubts about the chupacabra. People forget that, you know, they had all these sightings in Texas, and Ken Gerhardt was on the show, and even Lyle Blackburn was on the show talking about, you know, the chupacabra for some reason turned out to be this, you know, two-legged, short-armed, you know, big-eyed, weird-looking alien-type lizard creature into a hairless dog. And there's so many, you know, people, and it turns out that every time there's a dog, it's either a wolf or a coyote that has this mange. Well, you know, to me, that's telling me that you know, this does not really work. People forget how things evolve and change. And like you said, a lot of people now are talking about Dogman. I think that out of everything, and believe me, I debunk more than I profess the truth in the Bigfoot world. You know, it's just the sad fact that when stuff comes to me and I evaluate stuff, it just does not, either one, it doesn't fit the sniff test, or two, it doesn't fit the legitimacy test. I mean, you know, we talk about the Bigfoot peeper months ago. I don't know if you've ever saw those pictures of Bigfoot peeping in the window. And I start looking into it. This guy on Facebook posts this. I'll try to track him down. Being a private investigator, I track him down, and I find out that the guy is using his middle name as a first name and just his last name. And it turns, he has a child molestation record. And it turns out he doesn't own property where he said these pictures were taken.
Yeah.
And, but there's a small portion of people that want to deny fact. And that is an issue too. And that's social media. There's people that are going to deny sides of the argument. There's going to be people pro Bigfoot, anti Bigfoot that will misinterpret fact. The fact is, and I want to get back, digital cameras make horrible with their autofocus, make a real hard time to shoot in the middle of a forest because they always focus on the thing that's in front. Just look at this camera right here, right? I don't know if I can do it, but the camera will automatically go in and out of focus sometimes, especially when you first start it up. It just doesn't happen. And then you got to think about the delay, the mind. Somebody's seeing this, I don't have time. I'm not even thinking. I'm like, what the hell am I looking at? And it takes time for that mind to register what you are seeing. The same thing, as a hunter, you don't automatically see something and go bang. You sit there and you aim, you bring it up and you say, okay. And then you identify it and then you shoot.
Yep.
If it's a deer, bang, turkey, bang, mother-in-law, bang. Oh, no, I didn't say that. Anyway.
No.
I think it's culture too, because like if you look at something like the Mothman in Point Pleasant, during the time of the Cold War, 60s, there's a lot of just random things going on, and I think just the society that you're in and what you're culturally influenced, even with like aliens or UFOs. I'm not saying all of them. I mean, I definitely think there's something to it, but it's like with the 50s and movies and how that social construct just kind of evolves into modern day. So if you see, aliens and UFOs on the TV, you're going to see them, in real life, and just how culture sort of evolves from what they're influenced by. So I think that itself too has a lot of valid points to that sort of thing. And I think it's to some points, those things are also attributed to cryptid sightings. But even if that's the case, I'm always interested in the stories too, and I want to hear what the stories have to say. I'm not gonna just throw the baby out of the bathwater, but it's like I want to learn more.
You know what, Ron?
Oh no. Ron, that's terribly funny. That's funny right there. I don't care who the hell you are. You don't like it, get the hell out. No, I'm just Sean Goday says there are some things that go bump, and I agree. You look at what I call the big three. I mean, when I grow up, there were three big phenomena. You had UFOs, paranormal, and Bigfoot. And I really feel that there is legitimacy to all three of those things in certain ways. There's a lot of goes on, in all of the fields. Do things get overblown? Yes. The Amityville horror, was it true? I look at the fact, Jeremy asked about, let's give Mothman some airtime. Absolutely. I've been on the Point Plaza. It's a creepy area, big red-eyed thing flying through the air. I don't know. Wasn't there. But I do know that whatever was down there scared the shit out of the people that would see it.
Right.
But, to me, some of those other cryptids, I got to have a little more. Bigfoot, there was always a little bit more. UFOs, there was a little bit more because you had radar information, and sometimes you would have radiation or people that gotten burned and stuff like that. And then you have like the Travis Walton thing where he disappears and he's got 4 people that were with him, 5 people that were with him that were all being looked at for killing him during the time he was missing. And they all passed lie detector tests, all of them. If one of them failed, that would be a big flag. If two of them failed, that would be a big flag, but all of them passed. So that's telling me some stuff. The Mothman, I don't know. Is it tragic that it happened around the collapse of the Point Pleasant Bridge? Is it weird that the Mothman has only been seen in a few places rather than all over the place? You know, there's been reports, I guess, of a Mothman in Poland before an accident and stuff like that. But how much of that is urban legend versus how much of that actually happened? I don't know. Right. You know, I will be the first one to tell you that not every cryptid I'm well versed on. I know my Bigfoot. I know my Loch Ness Monster because I was out there. And even that is kind of worn off over the last 10 years because I don't follow it as much as the one cryptid I do follow is what's in front of us, the good old Sasquatch. If they're, I run a paranormal group, so I deal with that kind of stuff as well. But I don't think there's any connection between the paranormal and Bigfoot. Could there be between the paranormal and Mothman? Possibly. Paranormal and Dogman? Possibly. Maybe it's a manifestation of something. Don't know. People are seeing something, so it needs to be answered. But I will not answer something with a bunch of poppycock, with a bunch of untested. It's cloaking. It's this. It's that. I can give you some possibilities, but I'll tell you, after going into my 22nd year of Bigfoot research, 27 years of 22 years of Bigfoot research. I've got a pretty good grip on what this is and what it isn't. Not saying I'm a knower. I'm a believer. And I started off as thank you, Ron. I don't want to go into irrational speculations. Yeah. Every speculation I need, what I know about, I can go rational. Anything else, it's irrational because I don't have enough time in.
Well, what I like about Steve Kulls is he's like just the facts, and he's a facts kind of guy. He's not if you tell him about your sighting, he's not gonna say, well, what you saw was light from Venus being refracted through swamp gas. No. It's gonna be, well, I'm not sure what you saw, but here's some tracks over here, and we'll look at those.
Right. Yep.
Wow, chat room's hopping.
Was throwing that out there. Now you scared me. Well, I don't think I don't think there's anything to be scared of. I mean, I've been asking the aliens for years to pick me up, but they won't. Now I want to stay. They'll try to pick me up. Watch that. But there's a lot of people don't know that my first jump into the field was actually ufology. So I'm very well versed in ufology as well. And yeah, I've had dinner with Dr. Stanton Freeman, the late Dr. Stanton Freeman, and
great guy.
Great. He was a great guy, very intelligent, very, very pragmatic man. And boy, he knew what he really knew was a lot about Betty and Barney Hill, the first lost time UFO abductee case. And that happened in the 60s. And
yeah,
as it was back then. I've met Kevin Randall, who's written a couple of books on Roswell, who is a retired U.S. Air Force captain and was a pilot. Fascinating man. So I've talked to a lot of interesting people over the years on a lot of different subjects. I've met Tony and Judy Sparrow, who's the son-in-law and daughter of Ed and Lorraine Warren. I've met Josh Gates. I've met Ben Hansen. Had some conversations with them all about different things.
Josh is funny.
But not a Bigfoot believer, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Josh Gates does not believe Bigfoot exists because he feels that, they would have been found already.
Come here,
get away. And I can disagree with that.
Come here,
You know.
cat.
Oh my goodness.
Sorry. We got cats here too, evidently.
You know, I'm going to try to keep it clean tonight.
Thanks, cat. Appreciate that, Morris.
Here. Morris, I love it, the cat.
That was Morris the cat. He had to make his debut. Okay. Walked right in front. You see him? He walked right in front of the camera.
Well, and Ron says, anytime you choose supernatural as an answer to a mystery, then you choose a lazy research. And to that I say, incorrect. Maybe applicable to Bigfoot research, but may not be applicable to like Mothman research, where it may have been some actual or paranormal or paranormal. So, you know, that's the way I look at these things. So we got a few minutes left. If we run over a little bit, we'll run over a little bit. George, let's talk about your project coming up called Cryptid Hunt. It's all you. Fire away.
Yeah. No, you know, it's.
I'm going to mute out.
I would love to talk so much about it, but just because of it's starting out, I will say that, you know, this is something that I knew would come back one day. I just had to be at that moment like, this is it. This is the time. And I think because of the pandemic, that really just kind of, just the embers of that time just kind of flow blown. So, this has been a subject that is near and dear to my heart. This is a passion. And I normally don't say that with everything, because I do have some, you know, interest in other things, but like, you know, with cryptozoology and especially with Sasquatch, it's like, you know, there's so much to this that has so much validity, and it just can't be ignored. And for somebody like me, you know, as a filmmaker, you know, there's a lot of television, there's a lot of Bigfoot and paranormal programs. I mean, Travel Channel, their entire channel is based on the paranormal now. Like it's unbelievable. And there's so much saturation where they just care more about the ratings, but they don't care about the quality. And for me, I want to be able to tell these stories. I want to strive to, you know, show people that, you know, these things are happening, these things are real. And especially with today, you know, there's a lot of just white noise of politics and just, you know, such a division where I think a lot of people have just forgotten, you know, the natural wonder and mystery of the world. And for me, that's something that stirs a lot of creativity. And I really want to put that with this new project that, you know, I'm hoping to create something really special and just, you know, kind of show people that, you know, there's something to this. And, you know, there's going to be a lot of people I'm going to see again, which I'm really excited about. And there's a lot of people, you know, old friends that I haven't seen in years, you know, that I'm almost 30 now, and I met them when I was only a teenager.
Yeah.
So it's going to be completely surreal. And you, Steve, I'm hoping, you know, sometime, maybe this summer, we can plan something out. But
hopefully I won't be using a walker by then. How you doing, Jordan? You son of a bitch!
I'll pick it up.
Mr. Abernathy, get back out.
But you know, it's going to be awesome, and I'm real excited to like just resurrect these old interviews that I myself haven't seen since that time too, just because technology has evolved, and there was no way for me to look at any of these old tapes. So it's going to be a crazy ride. So maybe invite me back maybe a year from now, and I can talk more about it.
Absolutely. And Jordan, you know, like I said, come on up. You're always invited. You're always invited. Just let me. We'll make it happen. I'll make sure you get some video of some stuff I have and pictures of stuff I have, and you can use it. It will.
Awesome. Yeah. So
I really look forward to this. And we had a great show tonight. I had a lot of fun. I hope you did too, Jordan, even though my laptop became in the middle of the show.
That's all right, man. Hey, we had show and tell, dude. It was great.
That's right. Well, we're not going to have any outro tonight because I have rigged the outro machine to broadcast more. And, yeah, I'll have this thing fixed by the end of the week. So shouldn't be a problem. Thank God it's not a hard drive or anything else. If it's a battery or if it's just a stupid charging cable, issue. If not, I'll have an all new computer next week. So,
yeah.
And, But folks, I want to, of course, thank you, Jordan, for coming on. Chris, you want to do your thing too?
Yeah, man. First of all, I want to thank Jordan for being a great guest. Thanks, Jordan. And we want to thank all of our listeners and everybody in the chat room. You guys are great. Thank you very much for joining us. And remind our viewers on YouTube, if you're tuning in for the first time, man, hit like and subscribe. If I don't get attacked by a dog, hit like and subscribe. Ring the notification bells, and it really helps us out with the ratings, and we can do more stuff with the channel. Thanks. Back to you, Steve.
Yeah, back to me. Well, again, thanks to our guest, Jordan Warner. And of course, we will be announcing as things progress with that. We'll be announcing some stuff for Jordan. He's always welcome back on the show, talk about his adventures and misadventures. God knows there's been more misadventures than adventures. But at least on my part. But anyway, we'll be back here next Sunday night. What's next Sunday night? Oh, my goodness. Next Sunday will be the 25th. Be the last show before Halloween, and it'll be the last show before the new season of The Mandalorian. Damn it!
All right.
Oh, and our Kickstarter will be on Halloween, FYI. So tune in for that.
There we go. I knew there was some. Again, happy birthday, Bob Gimlin. Folks, we'll be here next Sunday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, Facebook.com/Steve.Kulls, YouTube.com/Steve Kulls, Twitter.com/SquatchDET, Squatch-D. And of course, you can listen to the replays if you're one of our friends and that likes to listen to the audio rebroadcast. We are now going to be on, once the file is uploaded to our good friends at Anchor FM. Of course, we broadcast to you live each week via our friends at StreamYard. After that, we upload our audio portion to Anchor FM, and then they ship it out to places like Spotify and Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts and Stitcher. But now we're also on iHeartRadio. So, again, another area for our podcast listeners to revisit. Again, please hit the subscribe, like button if you like what you hear. If you don't like it, give it a thumbs down. If you like it, give it a thumbs up. And folks, we'll catch you here next week, Sunday night, 9 p.m. And there's no outro, so we're done. Good night.
See ya.
Bye-bye.